So I hope that you're all doing great. And I wanted you to feel welcome to our community, Mommy's Love, and to this video, of course. And the reason why I'm doing this video is because I have a lot of new moms that get very concerned about like lactation consultants or IBCLCs, or however you want to call them. Basically, they're kind of lactation specialists, but they have some sort of medical background or something like that. So I get a lot of moms that get kind of nervous, especially first-time moms, and they're like, oh, okay, so like under what circumstances do I see an IBCLC? Should I see them when I'm pregnant? Should I see them when there's a problem? Like, how do I go about that? Because also IBCLCs, although a lot of insurance companies are covering them now, most don't. Okay, so it's usually something that you have to it's a out-of-pocket expense, and usually it can get pricey because some of them can charge like up to $100 an hour. Some of them have different sessions, like one while you're pregnant, one after you just had a baby, and then a postpartum visit later on. So they all kind of work differently. But in regards to that, I don't think you should really need to see a lactation consultant unless you suspect that there's going to be a problem, maybe because you've had a predetermined medical condition diagnosed while you were pregnant or when you were a teenager, something like that, where you would suspect, especially where it involves hormonal imbalances or something like that, or hormonal issues, because that could affect your breastfeeding. So in those type of cases, I think it would be a great idea to see a lactation consultant, although it's not like 100% necessary. There's a lot of different research that you can do. There's a lot of breastfeeding courses or communities that you can attend. I have one of those breastfeeding courses, so there's a lot of information there that you can get, so you can learn more about breastfeeding, more about things that you can do to become prepared ahead of time. So you can do a lot on your end too. But obviously that's while you're pregnant. Once you have a baby, then the situation changes drastically, because obviously your baby needs to eat and you are frustrated or you're in pain, and there's a lot of things going on. So if you have had hormonal problems before, or like issues when you were a teenager or while you were pregnant or something like that, and it's affecting breastfeeding and you've already had your baby, then definitely, I mean, don't even bother wasting your time like doing all the research yourself, because really it is really important that you speak with someone who knows a lot about lactation, whether it doesn't necessarily have to be an IBCLC, but someone who's some sort of lactation specialist, and definitely someone who has like a past experience with breastfeeding too. So definitely, if you are breastfeeding, you just started to breastfeed, you've had a baby, you're having issues, and you've had hormonal imbalances or issues or problems before, the best thing to do is definitely, I wouldn't even go to my doctor, to be honest. I would go straight to an IBCLC, because they're going to know a lot more about lactation than your doctor. Then if you need to have something prescribed or something like that, then you can go see your doctor, but definitely speak to the IBCLC first. So that's regarding kind of more extreme cases. But in the case that you're just, a first-time mommy, you've had no issues or anything like that in your pregnancy, healthy pregnancy, you're healthy yourself, you've never had any hormonal imbalances or anything like that in your past, then you don't need to see an IBCLC while you're pregnant, unless you really, really want to be extra super prepared and you want to. Then that's great. It can give you a lot of peace of mind. But to be really honest with you, I think if you do kind of like read about lactation, read books regarding breastfeeding, if you go into communities that are breastfeeding advocates and things like that, if you go to a breastfeeding support group, go to a few sessions or as many as you can, they'll always welcome you with with open arms. They love to see pregnant mommies, because if you as a pregnant mommy do your work in regards to being prepared, researching, being aware, and just consuming as much information as you can about breastfeeding, the less problems you're going to have when you start breastfeeding. And when you go to that support group, you're going to go for encouragement, for support, for happiness, but not because you're having like major issues or anything like that. Okay, so that would be kind of my advice regarding when you should see a breastfeeding consultant or breastfeeding specialist. The other one too that I would recommend, okay, this is kind of like a different case, but I think I should also mention it. If you suspect that your baby has a tongue tie or a lip tie, and that's causing the issues with breastfeeding, definitely go see a lactation consultant or a doula or a midwife. Sometimes they have way more experience in regards to that than your actual doctor or pediatricians even, okay? So if you suspect anything like that, definitely go to an IBCLC, because that's very kind of technical, and even if you go in Google and look at pictures and stuff like that, you can always 100% tell. But lactation consultants and midwives, doulas, because I've seen so many newborn babies breastfeeding, they can detect those straight away. In fact, I've had many cases where moms have, perfectly healthy, they've taken the baby to the doctor, to the pediatrician, no one can find out what's going on, and a midwife straight away sees that this is what's happening, the tongue tie is like this or that or whatever, and they can diagnose it straight away. So they're very, very knowledgeable in regards to those things. In the hospital, you do get to see an IBCLC. There will be an IBCLC that comes to visit you that just does a very, very quick and very basic check in regards to breastfeeding. Don't rely just on that, okay? If you feel that you're having issues or something where you're worried about breastfeeding, and you've not been able to find the answers that you want from the studying and the preparation that you did while you were pregnant, don't just rely on that IBCLC at the hospital. I would get a second opinion. And the reason I say that is because IBCLCs in hospitals is not that they're not that good or that they don't care. It's just that they're so busy and they have so much protocol to follow and guidelines and things like that. They don't have that kind of mindset where they think out of the box, where I've had experiences of speaking with both type of IBCLCs based in a hospital and IBCLCs that are based out of a hospital. And they just have completely different ways of thinking, because like I said, IBCLCs outside the hospital, they have very, very extensive experience, and they have they're a little bit more adventurous, should I say, okay? So they're willing to try more things, where the IBCLCs in the hospitals, they're super cautious about what they say, how they say it, because they have so much that they have to adhere to in regards to protocol and guidelines. So I would just be a little bit cautious there, and if you are not like 100% sure with what they're saying, remember that as soon as you conceive your baby, you develop that maternal instinct, and you know what's best for your baby. You know when things are not going right, and even more so when they're born. So stick to that. If you're not 100% sure with the answer that you've gotten, go see another IBCLC. And that's kind of my take in regards to when you should see an IBCLC. And the other thing too is, if you're ever in the situation where, like I said, once your baby's born, things change drastically because you just don't have the time to start to go and do a bunch of research and talk to different people. So you really need to have a fast solution. So if you are in that position where you're in pain, or where you just feel like, you're about to give up on breastfeeding, or you just can't go on or anything like that, definitely see an IBCLC or a lactation specialist, or speak to someone like me that knows a lot about breastfeeding. Don't just go for answers to like your mom and your friends, and most of the time they haven't even breastfed, so they don't know what issues could be going on. So speak to someone that knows about breastfeeding, okay? Or an IBCLC if you can't get a hold of somebody else. And definitely reach out to the breastfeeding community. There's so many groups. Our support group is always open, and so many people, that other moms that have breastfeed, that can point you in the right direction. But don't just take the burden on yourself, okay? Reach out for help is really, really important, especially with breastfeeding, because it's so overwhelming. Once you get to that stage where you're kind of struggling, it's really overwhelming, and it can really take a toll on your emotions and just your general well-being. So reach out for help. That's like my number one thing, okay? And me personally, I'm here for you 24/7. I'm constantly on the chats. I'm constantly looking at your comments and constantly on Messenger. So definitely reach out to me if there's anything that you need. Okay, mommies? Bye, besitos. And I would love to hear from any mommies that have spoken with IBCLCs, or have read any good books or any resources that have helped. Please share them so that we can share them with the other mommies. It'd be great to know what type of information helped you along your breastfeeding journey. Bye, mommies.